So the first thing we're going to do today is talk about Claris Connect. Claris Connect has a UPS connector. We've looked at it a little bit, and I've got two demos to show you. The first is going to be a simple form submission that has nothing to do with FileMaker. Just takes a form, uses Claris Connect to send out an email label. And then the next thing we're going to do is get in a little more in depth with a FileMaker sample that goes through rating, shipping, and voiding of shipments. So here I've logged into Claris Connect, and you can see I have a few different flows that are set up. The first one we're going to look at is the form submission with Mailgun. So this is super simple. I went in Form Stack and I created a form that will basically pass back a few pieces of information for doing a sample request. So we have a name, an address, a city, state, zip code, phone, email, and then some particular product that was requested. So when that is submitted, that will trigger the sample request action in Claris Connect, and then it will take the information that came through the form, and I pre-populated the shipper information in here, and then the recipient name gets set from the form data, and then we have to set a package type and some dimensions and a weight and a service. So that's pretty simple. And then the last action we have here is actually sending the label with email. We ended up using Mailgun to do that because the label that comes back from UPS is going to be an image, and it's base64 data. And with Claris Connect, there was no way to decode the base64 data and set it up as an attachment or things like that. So using Mailgun, we created a HTML body, and inside of the body then we dropped in the label component using tags for an inline image in the HTML instead of sending an attachment that wouldn't be readable. So here we've got our sample form. We'll fill it in real quick. And we're going to request product A, and we'll submit that form. So that's done. And now that we submitted the form, that's going to run our Claris Connect action. And then in our inbox, we're going to get this email right here. So we can see that the sample was requested. Here's my name. Here's the product I requested. And then here's the actual shipping label that has the ship from, ship to information. And it's ready to be printed and shipped out. So the next thing we're going to look at is using Claris Connect along with FileMaker to rate, ship, and void a transaction. So we'll go back here and look at our different flows, and you can see here I've got 3 additional flows that are created. This first one here is for rating, and this takes a script trigger which is going to come from FileMaker. And it's going to look at a function, it's going to say go out and get a rate, and then we're going to check that for errors. And if we don't get an error, we're going to go back and edit the record, and then after that we're going to execute a script. So let's look at the database first before we dig into the details there. So I took the sample FileMaker invoice database, and I added some fields to it for a ship method, the weight, the dimensions. I added a portal in here to show our different rates. So we've got a service, the days in transit, and then our cost information, along with the build weight. So if we rated something that had larger dimensions and it would go over, that would come back and it would show that in the rate. And then I also added some error debugging in there too, just in case we send invalid data, so that we're not waiting for rates or not getting incorrect or not getting correct rates back. So this is pretty simple here. When we have our rate button here, Basically, we go out, we build a JSON chunk with the ship to information, and then we do a simple curl request with a post that's going to send that data. So again, if we go out and we look at this get rate, this is going to take the data from our trigger. It's pre-populating the information in here to start with our postal code and things like that. And then we're taking our FileMaker data, which is the ship to information. We preset the country, we preset the packaging type. It's got dimensions in inches, and then we've got our actual dimensions. One of the things here that's interesting is with Claris Connect, dimensions are required. With UPS, it's not required to have dimensions to get a rate. You're always going to get a better rate or a more accurate rate by passing the dimensions, but it's not a requirement even though Connect requires it. So then we've got our weight. So those are the basic fields in here with Connect for getting a rate. And then we can see here after it runs, we've got edit record, which is just going to take our ID that was passed from the initial request, and then it's going to pass back the response from UPS. And then it's going to run a script in our database to parse the rates. And then we're done. So if we flip back to FileMaker, and then we look at our trigger then for the post rating, we can see here we've got parse rates. So it runs the script, passes the data as a script parameter. We make sure we're on the correct layout. We then go through, make sure we're on the correct record. We clear out the build weight that was in there. We delete any previous rate records. And then it looks to see if we actually got a rate back or if we got an error. If we got rates back, it loops through and creates portal rows in there with the days, the service, and the cost information. So let's run that and see how it looks. Right now we had a package in here before where we rated. I'm going to change it to 2 pounds, and when we rate it, we're going to see that our dollar amount here changes. So that came back pretty quick. So when we hit the rate button, it sent the data to Claris Connect. Claris Connect went out to UPS and got the rates. It then ran, sent the data back to our FileMaker server, and then it ran the script trigger to update the rate portal there on the server. Now if we went in here and we typed in something that was invalid, like bad dimensions, and we run a rate, you're going to see it cleared out the rates, and then it's telling us here that the package exceeds the required dimensions. And you can also look in here and put some debug information in there if we wanted to look at that JSON down the road. But we can go back and put in some valid information again then and get our rates. And we can see we're back there again. We've got our service selector pop up here, and now we want to ship this. So the shipping flow is very similar to the rating flow. It's going to take the data from FileMaker, and we'll scroll down here again, and we can see we're setting the ship to information, the dimensions, and the weight, and the service. And on success, it's going to update the JSON field in our database, and then it's going to run our script to parse out the results. And again, if we got an error, it would throw the results from that error into that transaction. So we're going to run it. Let's run ship. And it brought back our tracking number. We've got our cost, and we've got a shipping label right here. So that's pretty cool, and it actually worked pretty quick. Granted, there are then different points of failure as well, right? Because we're going from FileMaker out to Claris Connect to UPS, back to our server, and then we're running the script to get that label. But again, it comes back really, really quick. And if we wanted to void the shipment for some reason, we have just another flow in here. And this one's pretty simple. This is the cancel shipment. It just accepts a parameter of the tracking number. And again, it's going to update our record in FileMaker and run the script after we do the void. So there, the void was successful, so it cleared out the cost and tracking information and our label image. And let's just take a look real quick here then at the script. So after we run the ship transaction, we get the JSON back, and we're just going to pull out the elements in there for the tracking, the cost, and the label image. So the label image is going to come back as base64 data, so we're using the FileMaker function base64 decode. On that JSON, we're setting it as a GIF image, and that drops it right into that container. And then on the void transaction, similar to the other ones, we take a look at the result that we've got coming back. If we don't have an error, we're going to go out and just clear the track, cost, and image information. And one of the other things you'll see is we do some error checking in here. Again, best practices, right? So when we run the button for shipping, we're going to look at it and say, hey, is there a tracking number in there already? If there was, we would have thrown a dialog to say it was already shipped. And we could add additional validation in there too to make sure that we've got a service selected or a weight is selected, or since we're using Claris Connect here, we want to make sure that the user entered dimensions. So we wouldn't want to run weights or run a shipment unless that information was actually there. So that's a really quick demo showing how to use the UPS connector in Claris Connect to do rating, shipping, and voiding. Now the UPS API does provide a lot more functionality. Claris Connect only implements those 3 different methods. There's other things in there for doing address validation. Oh, there's actually a tracking in there too. But it doesn't support the full set of the UPS API.